time that they left Stanford and have been back here, so congratulations to them. But in any event, they were part of the J.S. Knight Fellows Program, the journalism program. And as they were leaving, and very sad to leave Stanford after a year here, they said, well, wouldn't it be great if we could do something similar for other emerging leaders in Ukraine, where they're from. And this kind of miracle happened where they went back to Kiev. They started raising money for it. This has to be a kind of record for Stanford to move this quickly between, so it was like basically less than a year between the time they left and the time that this program was put in place. And it was really due to, a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial energy on their part that this happened. Of course, it could not happen with a number of donors who are here, one of whom is here with us, no, two of whom are here with us tonight, whom I would like to acknowledge. Jaroslava Johnson will be speaking, so I'll introduce her separately. But Thomas and Natalia Fiala were also donors, and Slava, yeah. And then Slava Vakarchuk, who is right in the front there, and also the, and then finally the Astom Foundation. So thank you. Without you, of course, this never would have happened. So let me just say a little bit about why Ukraine, because actually after we announced this program, I started getting calls from Brazil and other countries saying, well, why can't we have an emerging leaders program for our country? And of course, it would be very nice to be able to host a separate program for all of the deserving countries in the world, but I do think that Ukraine has had a special role, especially with us here at CDDRL. We're a center that is devoted to research on the questions of democratic development, but we also, we are also involved in policy, and we hope that some of the things we do are trying to make the world better in terms of building democratic institutions. And I think that Ukraine really is one of the frontline countries in what is a global struggle over democracy. One of the things that's been very disturbing that Mike McFaul and Larry Diamond and a lot of us have been writing and thinking about over the last few years is the rise of a new kind of authoritarian government, populist nationalism. As Larry says, we are in the middle of a democratic recession that seems to be deepening around the world. One of the driving forces of that, unfortunately, is Moscow right now. And the countries around Russia have been victimized by that. And so I think that in this kind of global struggle of ideas, to keep the democratic idea alive and going, it's extremely important that we demonstrate that you actually can break out of an authoritarian past, you can break out of deeply entrenched corruption. And Ukraine tried once after the Orange Revolution back in 2004. That didn't work so well. But as miracles happen, they had another go at it with the Revolution of Dignity. And I think CDDRL, through our Draper Hills Summer Fellows Program, through the alums of that program, through the Leadership Academy for Development that's been to Ukraine a couple of times, we've been trying to cultivate, this is really, I think, the only thing an institution like ours can do. We can't affect policy in Washington or things going on at a government level in Ukraine. We're primarily an educational and research institution, and what we can do is work with actual people. And I don't think that a democratic revolution in a place like Ukraine is going to exist without cultivating not just some individuals, but really a whole generation of young reformers that want a very different kind of society. I've personally been to Ukraine quite a few times in the last few years. It's very easy to get pessimistic about the future of that country if you simply read, the news reports about infighting and corruption and the occupation, the war, this terrible war that's going on in eastern Ukraine. My personal experience from every visit that I've made and from the Ukrainians that we've been able to bring to Stanford really makes me optimistic, because it's convinced me that there really are people that are extremely bright, energetic, hardworking, and are very much dedicated to really making Ukraine succeed this time around. And so that's, I think, what we've seen at CDDRL is our role to encourage that. And therefore, this Emerging Leaders Program was like a gift to us, because it was a terrific opportunity for us to, participate in that human capacity building. So we've been delighted that our 3 new emerging leaders have joined us this year. They've immediately settled in as part of the CDDRL family. We're delighted to meet them on a personal level. And I think that so that's why I'm really happy that we could have this event today to get this all kicked off. I should also thank members of my own staff at CDDRL without whom this really would not be possible. Sadaf Minapara was really critical at the beginning to actually get this program going, talking to the Knight people and finding out how you started a program like this. Neil Pinnock helped in the fundraising. Serena Beegis, our associate director, has been terrific in organizing the whole thing. And then Sasha Johnson, our Ukrainian-speaking staffer, who's actually been putting the thing together on the ground. All of you have done a really great job, and I want to thank all of you very much. So I'm going to introduce Jaroslawa Johnson, who will say a few words, and then after that, Mike McFaul, the director of the Freeman Spogli Institute, former ambassador to Russia and White House staffer in the previous administration, will moderate the panel involving our 3 new fellows, plus Slava Vakarchuk, who this year is a visiting scholar at CDDRL. So Jaroslawa Johnson is the president of the Western NIS Enterprise Fund, which is a private equity fund that operates in the region. She's been president and CEO since 2015. She directs, oversees, and provides overall management for their program activities and remains a member of the fund's board of directors. She was a founding member and former chairperson of the America-Ukraine Business Council, which sponsored the first American visit of an American president back in 1991, organized the first Ukraine-U.S. trade conference for American companies in 1992. She has a background as an international lawyer, working out of Kiev, but also internationally, and has spent her career promoting closer ties between Ukraine and the United States. So, Jaroslava, I invite you to come up, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It is a great pleasure for me to participate in today's launch of the Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program. Our fund decided to co-sponsor because the orientation of the program is a logical extension of the work we've done in Ukraine for 20 years. Most of you don't know what an enterprise fund is. The enterprise funds were created in the early 90s by Congress as a source of funding for investments in small and medium businesses in the countries of the former Soviet Union and the communist countries. The mission was to invest in small and medium entrepreneurial activity and to give it a boost so these countries can have starting businesses develop. Our fund was initially oriented on Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. Belarus dropped out because President Lukashenko would not give us the right to operate in Belarus. So we received $150 million seed money from the US government. And over the course of our 22 years, converted that to $168 million, and invested in 118 businesses. Thereby, we assured 25,000 jobs. And in the process of spinning off a daughter fund, which was permitted by U.S. law, the company's called Horizon Capital, we attracted $1.5 billion in additional funds to the region. But, from the very first time we started to invest in Ukraine, we realized that investing in Ukrainian businesses required education. Because while there were many entrepreneurs that were interested in starting their fledgling businesses, many of them didn't know how to manage a business, how to operate a business. So for our portfolio companies, we had a routine training program. We taught them corporate management, we taught them corporate governance, accounting, and even in some companies, we brought in experts to help them develop appropriate manufacturing processes. They were making things but didn't know how to do it well, or at least in accordance with Western standards. So that was a major accomplishment. And we had, in the process, educated 5,000 business managers. But that was really a small amount for a country of 45 million people. So about 2 years ago, we petitioned the US government to give us the right to use the proceeds, which were sitting in the bank account, for technical assistance to Ukraine. We continue to do investments. We have investments now in the IT sector, and we also still have some holdover investments from our first investment period. But for now, we have 4 programs, each of which also has an educational component. We realized very shortly after the Revolution of Dignity that markets were closed to Ukrainian products in Russia. So Ukraine had to find new markets. And so in the process of our technical assistance, we helped Ukraine draft a national export strategy. And along with that, SDDR, a roadmap that identified and prioritized which products Ukraine should sell to which countries in the world. And the initial perspective was, we'll sell everything to everybody, and we said, no, we have to rein it in a little bit, be targeted. And that was very, very important. We also set up an export promotion office that helped the government carry out its mission, and we're constantly providing training to small and medium businesses looking to export. In our local economic development program, we bring together local public officials as well as the NGOs and private organizations to solve community problems. And their small communities have a fair amount of problems. Also, their communities are now getting money through decentralization, and many of them don't know what to do with the money. They don't know how to use it. So we try to guide them in a way that it's used effectively and constructively for the community. Under the guise of that program, we were fortunate to meet Sasha Starodubtsev. And he was one of our first investors, one of the first projects we supported. Sasha met me in summer of 2015, and he came and said, is there any chance you can help us with developing this electronic procurement program? And it was uncertain what it was, but we said no one else wanted to fund it. And we said, by all means, we will fund it. And as it turned out, we helped develop the software and ultimately start the implementation of the program. So that was one of our local economic development. I know you say, why local? Why we put it into that program? Because corruption is endemic to Ukraine, and even local communities have a problem with state procurement. Another program we have is impact investment. Ukraine, as you know, is at war, as Professor Fukuyama mentioned, and the consequences of the war are devastating. There are 1.5 million of internally displaced people who lost their businesses or lost their opportunities to make a living. And of course, Ukraine also has emotionally and physically disabled people. So we're in the process of helping these people gain an economic independence by starting new businesses. We guide them, we advise them, we help them through the process, and we make sure that these businesses succeed. So we have mentors, and we help them. But our biggest program is economic leadership. And that program initially started with the idea that our fund would be giving scholarships for MBA studies in the United States at the top 50 schools. And that was a program we accomplished that mission. We give the scholarships every year. That program was enlarged to provide MPA studies as well, and LLM studies. Public administrators are important at the highest level. And the legal community said they needed to have lawyers trained in patent law and new technology, because the IT sector was growing very fast, and there weren't enough lawyers who understood how it worked. But we clearly understood, and in the process of doing this, we recognized that only through education of a responsible citizenry can Ukraine be transformed in the way that all of us would like to see it transformed. And our board recognized also that this education had to be available to all age groups. So shortly, our next program was the Ukrainian Leadership Academy. This is a gap year program that focuses on providing 18 to 17-year-olds with an opportunity for in-depth study in philosophy, in world philosophy, history, Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian history, volunteerism, but also self-awareness. We want them to become self-developed, self-aware, and know what it is they want to do in their life. Right now, we have 5 academies in 5 oblasts of Ukraine, and this year we have 200 students. Last year we had 200 students, so this is a major, major program that helps prepare the new generation of Ukrainian citizens. But when you deal with teenagers, you quickly realize the reason you need a leadership academy is because they had inadequate education in high school. So we started to look at where the teachers came from. And almost 50% of the teachers currently teaching in Ukrainian schools are the products of Soviet pedagogical institutes. And that education was, as you can imagine, Soviet. And many of them thought that the only instructional method was memorization and rote, and none of them encouraged critical thinking or development of critical thinking. So we decided to train teachers. And so we have a very active teacher training program. In the summertime, we have courses every few weeks for groups of teachers. We also have a liberal arts program because, again, liberal arts were ignored. Were not considered important. So we've gone through 3 cohorts of 120 teachers in our liberal arts program, and in several oblasts, in Odessa oblast, for example, we have teachers who are actually teaching themselves and teaching other teachers in their community, so that we'll have a larger pool of teachers capable of providing the instruction. Then we even went to an earlier age. IT is a big sector, and we decided that maybe we ought to provide coding lessons to 10-year-olds and above. So we have a future pool of IT-capable individuals. But this is just a small smattering of the programs we are offering right now. But as you can see from my description, that Ukrainian Emerging Leaders Program fits well, is a good complement to our entire package of educational programs. We think that educated citizenry is really the only way to go, and we are encouraging it at all levels because we think this is our taxpayer money put to good use. So that's what we've done so far. And obviously, when this program came to my attention, we thought it was a great opportunity, especially for 3 accomplished people who've done a lot already in Ukraine, but who have a good future ahead of them. And we want them to have the opportunity to use all the opportunities that Stanford provides to attend wonderful classes and expand their horizons and their worldview, to have good, solid mentors they can argue with and discuss things, and to pursue special projects they may have as well. I fully expect them to have a successful year, and I hope to see all of them next year in Kiev, and it's fully inspired and ready to take the challenges that Ukraine has in the future. So thank you again, and good luck to everyone. Thank you.
Started with our panel. My name is Michael McFaul. I am the director here of FSI. I also teach political science, and I'm also at the Hoover Institution. And yes, I did serve in government. As Frank said, I'm the former U.S. ambassador to Russia, and hopefully the future U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Because I'm not done yet either. I still consider myself a young leader. Actually, I was just in Ukraine. I was just in Kiev about 2 weeks ago. And if I could just say 2 sentences about why I think this is so important. Like Frank, I'm not even sure it's one of the front battleground states. I think it may be the frontline state in terms of the fight for worldwide democracy. And that's an important thing because you get a lot of attention, but I think it also creates a lot of responsibility. Because if you fail, other Democrats, including some Democrats that I know personally that live in your neighborhood, will also face more difficulties because of whether you succeed or fail. So remember, with incredible opportunity comes incredible responsibility. I spoke at a conference. I spoke at 3 different groups. One was a young leaders group, much younger than you, a regional group, and then some members of parliament. And I said to the high school, the college students there, I said, you are so lucky that you were born in Ukraine now. Because I didn't get that chance, right? I'm born in boring Montana. I live in boring Palo Alto. You know, I don't get a chance to be part of history. You know, we're kind of watching you, and as Frank said in the margins, we want to help. But man, what a incredible privilege that you've all had to be born in the time and place that you have, because you really have the opportunity to make history. But there's also a security piece that I want to emphasize in addition to what Frank said. I think maybe North Korea is the most threatening, scary moment in terms of history right now. But in the long term, how to deal with the security threat from Russia, I think is a giant challenge for the 21st century. And you and your country are also on the front line of that. I think lots of Americans, I get the sense that there's a lot of Ukrainians here, but a lot of Americans forget that part of the reason that Russia is stuck in eastern Ukraine is because they failed to conquer the rest of what they wanted to do. Because Ukrainians died and fought and stopped that threat. But that threat is not over, and that threat is still a big part of your country. I experienced it very vividly speaking to your leadership a couple weeks ago. And so this dual challenge of defending your country from one of the most threatening countries in the world, which happens to be your neighbor, but also trying to make democracy succeed at a time, as experts in this room know, it doesn't feel like democracy is progressing. That is a big challenge. I hope you're up to it. And we welcome the opportunity in the margins to contribute to your educational development so that you can go back and fight that fight for democracy and security. All right, that's what I have to say. Let me introduce, actually, you all got their bios, so I don't know if I should, but let me just go through briefly to remind you who is here. And then we're going to start with Slava with a few words, and if we have time, I have a few questions for everybody here, right? So first in the middle, Alexander Matvichuk. Did I get the accent right? Ukrainian is a challenging language for us English speakers. She's at the Center for Civil Liberties. Alessandra, do you go by Sasha as well?
Yes.
So we have a lot of Sashas here. That's 3 out of the 4.
Ukrainian variant is Lesia.
Lesia, okay. Lesia, okay. Human rights defender who works on issues in Ukraine and the OSCE region. At present, she heads the Human Rights Organization Center for Civil Liberties and also coordinates the work of the initiative group Euromaidan SOS. The activities of the Center for Civil Liberties are aimed at protecting human rights and establishing democracy in Ukraine and the OSCE region. Congratulations on being one of our first emerging leaders. By the way, we looked at the numbers. I think this was a harder program, you're nodding, right? It's easier to get into Stanford University as an undergraduate than it was to get into this program. And I think our admissions rate now is around 4.5% at Stanford University. So these are really the best and the brightest from Ukraine. Next, Dimitros here, Dimitro Romanovich. Did I get that accent right? Okay. He works in the Reform Delivery Office of the Cabinet of Ministers with a team of project managers. They work directly with the Prime Minister for facilitating reforms, monitoring progress, and coordinating across the ministries. Dimitro is also an advisor to the Ministry of Economy and is responsible for deregulation and improving the business climate in Ukraine. A really tough job. Congratulations for being here as well. And our third leader is Alexander Starodubtsev. Accent in the right place. You already heard about his work, which I heard actually quite a bit about when I was in Ukraine just a couple weeks ago. But he's a Ukrainian reformer who is deeply involved in the creation of a new electronic public procurement system called Prozoro, which is one of the most famous reforms in the country. Alexander, can I say Sasha? Yeah. Okay. It says here in my notes, Starodubtsev, I can say that word because I know how to speak Russian, is the head of the Public Procurement Regulation Department in the Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, and is official policymaker in public procurement and economic development. I was actually talking about you with one of your former colleagues and your former Minister of Finance, Natalia Yaresko, who was at the conference with us, actually, with you too, Slava, who now has a big, hard job in Puerto Rico. And finally, last but not least, Slava. You've already been introduced by Frank, and I feel silly in this crowd introducing you, but he is now a visiting fellow here at CDDRL for the fall. So he's on a shorter time span, so he has to work harder and study harder because of his short amount of time here. But you all know him. He's a civic activist, musician, and lead vocalist for the band Okean LZ, which I learned last night has no meaning whatsoever, those two words together, like you said. So,
all great bands' names mean nothing.
Okay, all right. But it is fantastic to have you here at Stanford for all kinds of reasons, Slava. And why don't you wanted to say a few words, so we'll start with you, and then I have a few questions for our panel. Please.
You say that I'm for a short term. I'm already considering to ask you to prolong my visa for a longer term. It's so good here. And you know what? I'll start for the joke. You know what is to be a good leader? We now all learn here what is to be a good leader. It's probably persuasion part of that, and it started all yesterday when I realized that I forgot all my ties in Ukraine. So I came to my friends, to cohort, and persuaded all of them, let's not wear ties today. It's not necessary to do that.
Actually, let me interrupt you. This is culturally sensitive because in the Silicon Valley and at Stanford University, nobody wears ties. So Frank and I are the ones that are out of pace in our community. You guys look like you're from Stanford. So.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to say some important words to you. I'll start from a very little history. In the middle of the 19th century, Japan was by all means far behind most Western states. Today, Japan is one of the most developed and powerful countries in the world. We know all that this dramatic change had been started by political enthusiasts who restored the power of the emperor, and this period is known as Meiji Restoration. One of the most important events of this period, as that many scholars argue, that many scholars think that it's right thing to say, was so-called Iwakura Mission. Iwakura Mission was a special enterprise and event when top diplomats, politicians, scholars, but among them a lot of students, boarded a ship in Yokohama and visited the US, Germany, United Kingdom, France, and some other European countries. Their actual main goal was to change some unfair treaties that Japan had before, and they didn't succeed. But they had the other goal, education. The goal of the mission was to study political systems, scientific achievements, systems of bureaucracy, and generally Europe and the USA in order to understand their success and to implement their success at home. The mission lasted 2 years, but many students continued their studying even later. So the Iwakura Mission now is considered to be probably one of the most important events of the period and probably of the whole Japanese history, because it started to change country. Today, we are welcoming here our first cohort of Ukrainian Emerging Leaders, which I strongly believe may become an analog of Iwakura Mission for Ukraine. We don't have here a lot of politicians and diplomats, and we don't have 2 years to visit all countries in the world. But we have here Stanford University, which in my opinion contains the knowledge from all over the world. We have a wonderful team here from CDDRL who helps us and is so sympathetic and supportive to Ukraine. We have here Professor McFaul, whose political vision is such an important for us. We have great professors, Larry Diamond, Stephen Krasner, Eric Jensen, and others whose combined knowledge, wisdom, and are so responsive to us. We sometimes are annoying, sorry for that. And we have sadly Francis Fukuyama, our spiritual leader, who inspires all of us every day. And it's no coincidence at all that even his name is Japanese. Finally, we have here our enthusiastic missioners, Lesya Matvichuk, Sasha Starodubtsev, and Dima Romanovich, who I believe, like these first Japanese missioners, came here to study and then to implement what they've seen in their own country. I'm convinced that these people, alongside with members of the future cohorts, will become hands, brains, and hearts that will build Ukraine all of us will be proud of. And thank you for sharing with us, with your knowledge, and for inspiring us. And regarding time, remember I was talking about time. Time, you know what, it can be squeezed, as Einstein said, and I as a physicist believe in that. So now let all of us to do our best to make this program consistent and successful, so we will have people like these who will be able to squeeze time for Ukraine. Slava Ukraini! Thank you.
Героям слава.
That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we have a big crowd here. I want them to be able to ask questions of you all. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask 3 questions all together right now, and everybody can answer either one of them or 2 of them or 3 of them or none of them. I've learned I do television from time to time, and you never have to answer the question. You can always say, that's an interesting question, but the real interesting question is this. But here are my 3 questions, and you can take them in whatever order from our 4 panelists, okay? And then we're going to come to you with questions, all right? So the first question is, what, in your opinion, is the biggest impediment to Ukrainian democracy, to a normal market system in Ukraine, to a stable Ukraine, the future of Ukraine that you want to see? That's the first one. What's your diagnosis? Second, what's your prescription? What is your idea for how to solve that problem, that impediment that you see? And then third, and this may be premature, this may be early, we might have to meet again at the end of your time at Stanford, but what do you think Stanford can do? What are the information, what is the education, what are the experiences that you seek here at Stanford that might prepare you to be the one that helps to provide that prescription for the problem that you see in Ukraine? Floor is open. Please.
Oh, okay, I can start.
Okay.
Everything probably is very easy. All answers on your questions are really easy. What can help Ukraine? Frank already told us, strong state, implementing rule of law, and with government accountability. Starting Prozoro, we already did something for government accountability. My mission here probably to work on the quality of bureaucracy and strong state, because I was working in the government for some quite period of time. But what can Stanford can do, of course, teach us here and continue this program, and I hope new Ukrainians can come here and study what we are going to study here. As you said, what is really important question. Maybe I will tell a few words about what Prozoro is, because Prozoro was mentioned here several times, and maybe not everybody is.
And let me say before you do that, when I participate in lots of meetings on Ukraine and Washington and just in Kiev, the number one thing that everybody says is corruption, corruption, corruption. So it sounds like you believe that corruption can be defeated. Tell us how you can do it.
For sure it can be. Despite of corruption, it's not a problem, as Ukrainians usually say. It's the model of management of the country, and this is more complicated because when you are stopping corruption, you harm many processes, and your government can deliver what it should deliver. Prozoro, it's a public procurement reform which was started 3.5 already years ago, with very clear mission how to stop corruption in public procurement, because public procurement was prone to corruption and was a symbol of corruption in Ukraine. We completely rethink and rebuild the infrastructure of this system. We create an absolutely new IT system, which is called Prozoro. Who doesn't know Ukrainian? Prozoro means transparent in Ukrainian, so this is a play on words, not only Zorro, who is fighting against corruption, but it has another meaning. And I probably in these 3.5 years proud, because the very small initiative that was started by me 3.5 years ago now deliver quite good results, because we have big savings to Ukrainian budget, like more than €1 billion already, direct savings. You can check it by yourself on bi.prozoro.org. All the data about all public procurement now is absolutely open in Ukrainian, in English. You can see all the figures, who has come, what was suggesting, what tender committee consider, and how did they make their decision. Now everything is absolutely open. But what is even more interesting for me, that spending 2.5 years in Ukrainian government, I can tell you definitely that it works. We can do reforms. We can deliver the results. We can change the culture. We can bring new people to Ukrainian government. It's absolutely possible. We are not failure state. Several good initiatives were born from Prozoro, like Prozoro Sale, another initiative which was supported again by our delighted donors, e-health, and I hope can contribute further in public administration reform, which already has been started in Ukraine, and I hope that I will come back and can contribute to this reform as well, because my focus of interest here in Stanford is people management and global public procurement exchange. The first one is about how, what Frank says, create the good bureaucracy and improve the capacity of Ukrainian government, how attract people to the government, how to keep them in the government, how to motivate them. And the second one is about global public procurement system, which is can be absolutely delivered worldwide based on Prozoro principles. Again, I'm ready to tell everybody who is interested to listen to me for a couple of minutes.
Couple of hours.
Couple of hours,
Believe
for
me.
sure.
And a couple of days.
We'll organize a special seminar.
I
on
understand
Prozoro.
your hint. Yeah, I will be very, very brief. I'm ready to share with you all of my ideas, and of course, we need your help. And now this is the message to Ukrainian community here, guys. We are here for 10 months, and we want to meet with you as much time as we can. We are really eager to share with you our understanding what's going on in Ukraine. Again, because from here, I think that you see this stuff a little bit frustrating. But there are many bad things in Ukraine. But we know good, and we know already how to fight sometimes with the president, the government, the parliament, and deliver results and deliver reforms in Ukraine. We are ready to share it with you. We want to get with you together. You are living in the perfect country, and you are working for the perfect companies. For sure, you know what to do and how to transfer this knowledge and this expertise to help Ukraine. My message is very, very, very strict and easy.
And modest.
Let's get together and make our Ukraine prosperous and better. And the last but not least, I want to say great thank you to CDDRL, of course, for hosting our Ukrainian team here, for our donors team for making it possible for 3 of us, and for my family, which left a well-established life in Ukraine, came here, ran with me again Maslow pyramid here. Thank you for making this possibility for me. I really appreciate your efforts altogether, make the better version of Alexander Starodubtsev.
Great.
Keep calm.
Now, I asked 3 questions, but
Yes, I remember,
I can tell we're going to say whatever we want.
Put him down.
Please.
I written it down.
She put him down.
I will try to answer to your question according to my experience. I'm a human rights defender. And 3 years ago, during the Revolution of Dignity, together with my colleagues, I created civil initiative Euromaidan SOS. We have brought together several thousands of people to provide legal aid to protesters. And every day, a huge number of prosecutors people passed through our care. People who were arrested, beaten, tortured, accused in criminal fabricated cases, and later they're dead and missing people. Then, for the second time in the last 10 years, Ukrainian people rose to defend their democratical choice to build a democratic country, and we paid a high price for it. So after the fall of authoritarian regime, in order to stop democratic transformation in Ukraine, Russia occupied Crimea and started a hybrid war in the Donbas. And today, we gathered victims' evidence, we document war crimes to present them to international justice. But at the same time, we struggle to reform our courts, our police, our prosecutors, our whole political system. So in the future, we are not facing the situation when our government shoots unarmed protesters. And Euromaidan became a catalyst of accelerated development of civil society and establishment of powerful volunteers movement. However, we have to be able to manage this energy through the revolutionary demolition of the authoritarian system to the building sustainable democratic institution that can change the course of our history. Ukraine needs to make a qualitative leaps and to exit the zone of transition in which we have been in the decades. And I'm here in Stanford to search the complex answers to these complex questions, and I will be glad to do it together.
Fantastic.
It's very hard to talk after such inspiring speeches, but I will try to still answer your question.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll try to avoid referring to Prozoro. Okay, Ukraine still has a huge USSR legacy in almost every sphere. During USSR, the government tried to control pretty much every sphere of its life, the personal life, social life, economics, and it had done it in the most inappropriate way by allowing or not allowing of each next step. Just you want to do one thing, you have to ask somebody. You have to do another thing, you have to ask another person. And the state in Ukraine is so vast at the moment, so wide, so broad still, that we don't have any other choice than make it less. The state is just pretending to fulfill all this function that is on the paper exist, but it is not performing. So one of the main goal for us in Ukraine was and still is to make the government lean and to free up the capacity for the bureaucrats. There is a lot of good bureaucrats in Ukraine with the right mission, values, etc., that want and can perform, but they just can't because they do very strange thing that is written on paper in the beginning of the previous century. So one of our key agenda for Ukraine in economic sphere and in other sphere is to make less government. As we saw on the last lecture of the Francis, there is a lot of great examples for us when the countries came through this moment of making less of the government in New Zealand, in other countries, and only then to increase the quality because of spare capacity. So I was doing the deregulation and business climate improvement in Ukraine, and it was very recognized as one of the most successful reform in Ukraine, except of Prozoro. And just in some numbers, for the last years, we abolished 15,000 of Soviet Union standards, more than 500 of some stupid regulations. That was one of the interesting examples that we The document that we abolished in the end of last year was dated by the 1926. 1926, and it was regulated the limit of the soap that have to be provided to the worker on the plant. We find out it and finally abolished. So there is so many stupid things that we have to do. And after abolishing it, it's only one part of the issue. We have to clean up it. And only then we have to build an institution. Yes, it has to be simultaneously. We cannot, we don't have time to do the first and the second. We have to build an institution. All of it is created by reforms, and reforms is a big process of building coalition, of pushing decision, of advocating, of lobbying, etc. And I'm here about the processes behind it. All my experience for the last 3 years was about how to make good things happen, like Prozora, like abolishing the food price regulation, like changing the control and surveillance system of the country. So I'm system analytics, I'm an economist cybernetics. I believe in process. I believe that if you made something right, that it can work. And I'm here to make a case for future reformers, for outsiders to this system, for future comers, even in the neighboring country, who can read what tools exist, how to build coalition, how to make the decision made. And the Stanford is a great place to learn about all of this, how to make things happen. Thank you, and I believe in Ukraine, in all of us, and in the success of this program and our country.
Great.
There were 3 questions.
3 questions,
Nobody
yes.
asked them, but there were only 3, so it's
And after
still
I'm
place
gonna,
for me?
and after I'm gonna give grades.
Probably I will try to just summarize it a little bit. You asked very difficult questions. I don't agree that they are simple. They are actually very difficult. And as my friends already stated, all of them are facing enormous challenges personally on their working places with their teams, and they're doing every day very successful things. All of these 3 bright persons who are sitting here are really heroes in our country. Probably they don't get, like, every day, are not on the cover of magazines still, but they will, I hope. But the things they do, the impact they create, is probably bigger than of those who are probably, whose face we already not only know by heart, but are willing to forget. Yeah. So first of all, I want to say that it's an enormous, opportunity for all of us, for Ukraine, to have these 3 bright people here. And thank you once again for making this opportunity to fulfill this opportunity. As Professor Fukuyama mentioned in his class, that strong state, rule of law, and democracy or accountability, these are 3 cornerstones. Ukraine started with democracy. We are not so bad in that part. But the others 2, which are the strong state and rule of law, are still on the very, very, I would say, the beginner's level. And we need to acknowledge that. And I'm happy that these people here are mostly focused on these 2 parts, although certainly all of us are Democrats, but mostly are focused on how to build a strong state and strong bureaucracy, and also how to make the rule of law working for everybody in this country. I believe if we improve the quality of the state and bureaucracy alongside with working and sustainable laws and rule of law implementing for everybody, we'll see serious success and probably even a leapfrog. So God bless you guys, and I hope that after you come back, we will have the competition not like 100 per person, but 1,000 per person.
It was hard, by the way, to get there.
So
to apply and get there.
Well, let me open it up. I have lots of questions, but there's a huge crowd. By the way, fantastic turnout for this event. So let's let you ask the questions, and if maybe I'll add bits and pieces as we go along. So we have people with microphones. Why don't you just get my attention, and then we'll start here. And if you could just tell everybody who you are, and then if you want to direct your question to somebody, please do so.
For any of you, hello. Yes, I would want to know, curiously, what the percentage of employees in your country are public employees.
Good question. As you're trying to remember, a big state is not the same as a strong state, right? I think that's what you're trying to get at. And that post-communist, post-Soviet legacy, of course, when the state was extremely enormous, is still, I think, a major challenge in Ukraine. But does anybody know the actual number?
I don't know exact number, but my gut tells me that it's between 15 and 20%, including teachers, doctors, etc.
Yeah, the central government is not so big. We have 15 ministries, like from 200 to 1,000 people each. We have governors' offices in the regions, but again, they're not so big. But if you count all teachers, all police, the army, we have a war, severe war with Russia. Yeah, so if we neglect all other people who are with a new law about public service are not public servants anymore, so I think it's not quite a big amount of people, like several hundred thousands. For a 40 million people country, it's not quite big.
Yeah, may I build up on that? It's not how many, it's who we're talking about. And the problem in Ukraine is not that our bureaucracy is big. There are probably countries which have much bigger number of bureaucrats and state workers. And the problem is that sometimes, and mostly in our country, these people have been taught by, like Soviet standards, which are absolutely not up to time and not up to challenge today in our country.
Yes.
That's what should be changed. That's why these people are here.
Larry Diamond.
Okay.
Spoke several times. This is the Larry Diamond everybody's been talking about.
That Larry Diamond.
Greetings, all of you. I'm a senior fellow here at CDDRL. So I'd like to ask not what you think Stanford can do, because we're trying to do something, obviously, by having you, but what you would like to see the Western democracies do in the European Union and the United States in particular. And more specifically, we can love you and pour aid on you, and certainly military assistance, including lethal military assistance, which I strongly favor. But it is possible that we can love you to death. And that if we just pour aid on you unconditionally, you, the state of Ukraine, there'll be no incentive to reform. Why bother if the money just pours in? So I'd just like to know how you address that puzzle that I think must be troubling Western officials. And where are the levers that we can press to offer extremely forthcoming economic and other assistance in exchange for, frankly, no more games, but really serious and far-reaching reforms in the way government works in Ukraine.
Please,
I can start with. If relying to the Western democracies and the situation there and its impact on Ukraine, my wish is for these countries to make it less polarized in terms of populism, how they act, etc. There is no solution for this, but it affects Ukraine very much because everybody is looking on US and Donald Trump and how he behaved, looking on Hungary, looking on Poland, etc. And it's affect very much. So if there is no, I know that there is no immediate solution for this, but this is a great threat for Ukraine because we look at the bigger country and how they behave and try to copy all of it. As for the financial aid and the recipes how to overcome the neglect or very slow reforms. Right now in Ukraine there is a big discussion about the new Marshall Plan or things like this. After a lot of very needed reforms for Ukraine, like the liberalization of gas market, future liberalization of the electricity market, and a lot of other things, the people is affected in a bad way of European integration. The populism and the leftist parties and the other opposition to the current government and current European integration is rising. It's natural. So why the kind of Marshall Plan that will be more or less similar to IMF support, very conditional with strict deadlines, but that is targeting the investments from the EU, like it was in Poland and other countries. There is a lot of infrastructure built by EU funds. There is a lot of impact investments like schools, etc. And even in Albania, this renovation, I've been there a year ago. It makes an impact, first of all, creating jobs, then visible European integration, not just in price hiking. It will be a good sign, but yes, definitely it has to be linked to the exact reform that they have to deliver, to reach it. Thank you.
Please, yeah.
Of course, it's a complex question, so I will try to be brief, and 2 remarks as answering. After Euromaidan, Ukraine, unfortunately, are not able to reload our political elite. And this is the main answer why our reforms are not so sustainable or systematic as we, as people, wish. And the recept of Ukraine reform is very simple. Civil society make pressure, international community make pressure, and unrepaired yet state machines start to move in the right direction. So it's first what has to be done. And second is on another level of view. Because when we speak about Ukrainian question or Russian-Ukrainian war, etc., we speak not only about Ukraine. We speak about one of reflection of global crisis of the post-World War system. And this crisis is evaluative as nature. And we see a negative trends even in a well-developed democracies. And there is a temptation not to solve this problem and hope that they will vanish, but the problem will not vanish. And my second remarks is to start seriously considering how to deal with this crisis.
Just shortly.
Please, yeah.
Larry, just shortly. This guy saved more than $1 billion for us. So help us to educate and bring up 100 people like these people, and you'll have $100 billion, which worth much more than IMF help for all years combined to Ukraine, and probably not diminishing importance both of money of IMF and javelins from the United States Defense Ministry. But I believe that education and these people are even more important today.
If you teach me, I can save too.
So next was right over here. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Nikita. I'm in Silicon Valley for 3 years. I'm a computer science student. So during my time here, I noticed 2 things in a good country formation. First is education, and second, strong political force. So Ukraine is lacking both of them. And